What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And this one is transfer tips for game week 31. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's teams, discuss whether they are good moves, and come up with alternatives as well. So we're going to discuss the likes of Gabriel injury, Isak possible injury, Kluivert not being in the squad, and much more. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So let's start with Gabriel, who went off with a hamstring problem against Fulham in game week 30. We don't yet know how long he might be out for, but it does seem likely he's going to miss a couple of weeks. We'll get an update from Mikel Arteta on Friday. If that update's not great, we'll know how bad this injury is based on whether he's in the squad against Real Madrid for the first leg of the Champions League. And that is being played after game week 31 and before game week 32. So if you're looking at your squad this week and you've got 3 other defenders you can play instead, and you want to put the decision off about who to sell Gabriel to, you could leave that transfer until game week 32 if you wanted to. But for a lot of people, you're probably looking to bench boost in 32 or 33. We've also got potential doubles in 33 as well. You don't want to be carrying injury doubts through those game weeks. So I would start having a think about who you might want to sell into. In terms of the options, I think going to Saliba seems the most obvious. With Gabriel not in that Arsenal team, they would be weaker defensively, but one player doesn't necessarily make the team much worse. I know for Man City, for example, when Rodri was out, they haven't been great this season, but I think even with Gabriel, the way that team sets up, especially out of possession, they will still keep clean sheets along the way. So going to Saliba, who you know is nailed to play every single game, seems like a pretty obvious transfer for most people. The other thing I like, especially if you're free hitting in 34, is it's Everton away, Brentford at home, double game week in 33, hopefully, Ipswich away, Palace at home. Arsenal's fixtures for the rest of the season are just pretty good, outside of having to play Liverpool away. So just putting Saliba in, then not having to worry about it down the line, does seem quite obvious. If Gabriel is going to miss out, presumably Kivior will play centre-back alongside Saliba, and he is cheaper. My worry would be, once Gabriel is back, you've then got a player that is not going to play, and you've taken up an Arsenal slot. And I just think if we have doubles in 33, blanks in 34, doubles in 36, blanks in 37. That's a lot of transfers to use. Do you want to mess around with Arsenal defenders? Probably not. So if you want to go that route, I would probably go to Saliba. I don't mind Timber as well, but he also came off with a bit of an issue. Might not be as bad as Gabriel, but I just think Saliba is safe. He might be boring, but he's a fairly safe and decent pick for the rest of the season. If you want to go outside of Arsenal, then you've got Man City. They also have pretty good fixtures for the rest of the season, although they will likely blank in game week 34. So it's Man United away this week, Palace at home in 32, and then hopefully a double of Everton away and Villa at home in 33. Vardy is the pick of those defenders. If you don't have the money, you could look at Ruben Dias, but I would just play it safe and get Vardy. His goal threat is much higher as well. I just think he's absolutely nailed. So Vardy is where I would go from Man City. Munoz is pretty obvious from Palace if you don't have a third Palace player at this point. Brighton at home in 31, 2 double game weeks and hopefully in 32 and 33. The fixtures aren't great. I don't think a Palace defender is a must, but if you have a spare slot and you don't want to go triple attack, then Munoz and Henderson are probably your best bets. Livramento for Newcastle. I think Newcastle are especially worth looking at if you don't have a free hit, because it's Leicester away in 31, double game week in 32, Villa away in 33, then Ipswich at home in 34. After that, the fixtures do get trickier, but Livramento is only 4.5 million. You could look at Trippier if he's fit and available, but I just don't think he's worth the outlay. I'd rather just spend the 4.5 on a Newcastle defender. Liverpool, another team to look at, no double game weeks, but obviously no blanks either. So for those of you that don't have a free hit, especially worth looking at. And ultimately, the fixtures are pretty good. Fulham away this week, West Ham at home in 32, Leicester away in 33. So although no double that week, probably one of the best single game week fixtures. And then Spurs at home in 34. And I wouldn't completely rule out Aston Villa. Forest at home this week, I'd be happy to play them in that. Southampton away in 32, happy to play them in that. And then a double in 33, hopefully, of Newcastle at home and City away. Doesn't look great on paper, but those next 3 game weeks overall, not terrible. And Cons is only 4.4 million. I wouldn't risk Luka Dean because Matson's always there. Cons is absolutely nailed. He's the only defender I'd be sure to play every single game. So that's why I would look at him. But again, they blank in 34. So if you're going to sell Gabriel, the most obvious transfer to go to is Saliba. If you don't have a slot to get Saliba because you started with double Arsenal defence but not Raya, i.e. you had Gabriel and Saliba as your 2, then I'd probably look for a different team. I don't think I would go to Kivior or Timber or someone like that. And my next choice would probably be Vardiol. So Bukayo Saka didn't start in game week 30, but he did come off the bench, scored a goal and picked up 2 bonus points. So a nice 8-pointer for anyone that went there early. He's now had over 200,000 transfers in this week and a price rise from 10.2 to 10.3 million. There's really not that many negatives to say about him as an FPL pick. If Arsenal get that double in 33 of Ipswich away and Palace at home, nearly everybody watching this video is going to want to own him. And it makes sense, especially when Haaland's not available and there's more money to go around. And if he's still fit by that point, he may even be the best captain. So definitely have a plan for when and how you're going to get Saka in. The only thing I would say, there's not necessarily a rush to get him this week. I suspect a lot of those transfers in are wildcarders, and it makes sense to include him in your wildcard squad. But for everyone else, it's Everton away. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. You're probably not going to captain him. And if you're looking to do a move like Palmer to Saka, well, Palmer's got Brentford away, which is no worse than Everton away. And then it's Ipswich at home in game week 32. Now, Palmer might play against Spurs tonight and blank again, and people will continue to be really frustrated with him. And I completely understand that if you want to sell him. But on paper, Palmer is as good, if not slightly better, the next couple of weeks. And then you can just make that move in 33. That's my plan, at least. If you've got other players and an easy route to get Saka for free, then that makes a lot of sense. But selling Palmer, I'm not completely on board with that. The other thing to say, he is only just back from a big hamstring problem, Saka. He was out for 3 months. I was a little bit surprised by how surprised other people were that he didn't start in game week 30. I know Arteta said in his press conference that he's ready to start, and we got the news that he played a behind closed doors match. But that's not the same intensity as playing in the Premier League. I think it was always more likely that he would be benched. I thought there was a chance he would start, but it was way more likely he'd be on the bench. That was my prediction. Who knows what his minutes will be over the next couple of games? We've got this historical evidence that Arteta will just play him every single week no matter what, and he has barely been rested over the last 2.5 seasons, but he's also not had a 3-month hamstring problem. And Real Madrid, first and second legs, are either side of game week 32. Now, I'm not even necessarily saying that he'll be benched against Brentford, because top 4 is not mathematically secure for Arsenal, but he could have reduced minutes in the same week where maybe Palmer goes and plays 80 plus against Ipswich. So it's not me trying to put you off buying Saka, because I think the guy is great and he's one of the best FPL picks this season and will continue to be for the rest of the season. I just think if you're looking to rip up your squad to get him in, there's not really a need to do that. Most people are going to captain Salah this week against Fulham, maybe Isak against Leicester. So what's the rush to get Saka in? If you can do it easily and for free, I completely get it. But taking -4, selling Palmer, personally, I think those moves can wait. So one player you might want to sell for Bukayo Saka is Phil Foden, who was benched against Leicester in game week 30 and got no minutes at all. And I know a lot of people are happy about that because they have bench points in FPL. But going forward, it's not an ideal position to be in. At 9.2 million, he's not cheap. And he's only started 1 of the last 4 Premier League matches. So I don't think he's a complete dud of an FPL pick all of a sudden, but I do think it's quite hard to justify buying him. And I know on the deadline stream, I said if I had higher team value, I probably would have gone for Foden. And I think that's true. I would have probably dropped Eze, put Foden in, dropped Evan Nielsen and gone for Mateta if I had more money to spare. Because at the time, Haaland was out, Marmoush playing number 9, I would have expected Foden to be in the team. But it just shows that Pep is still happy to leave him out, even with Haaland not available. Now, for what it's worth, Man City had just had an FA Cup game at the weekend against Bournemouth and then midweek game against Leicester, a team who they could have probably rotated their whole first 11 for and still won. So it's not like Foden was needed. So potentially it was just a rest. And for what it's worth, I would absolutely have Foden in my predicted 11 against Man United away. It's just that every week after that, you're always going to be slightly concerned about whether he's going to be in the 11. So I don't think many people should be looking to buy him. And if it's a choice between him and Saka, that's fairly straightforward. If you own Foden, I think you just stick to whatever your plan was before. Like game week 31, he's probably going to start anyway. You can just reassess week by week. If Foden to Saka was your move later on, you can just do it in the game week that you'd plan to do it anyway. If you had so much team value that you were on Salah, Palmer or Saka plus Foden, then it's a bit more difficult to know what to do. But I just don't think there's many other midfielders that you're missing out on right now. So I think you just give him the game week 31 match, save a transfer, and then decide what to do. I suspect most people that own him, that aren't looking to sell to Saka, will just keep hold of him. Because if he does end up getting decent minutes over the next few weeks, the fixtures are good after the blank in 34. It's Wolves at home in 35 and Southampton away in 36. So I just wouldn't make any rash decisions. It could absolutely be that he was just rested against Leicester and he's going to play a big part for the rest of the season for Man City. It could be that he's benched 3 of the next 4 games like he just has been, but I think you've got to see it out. So I wouldn't buy him right now. I think it's difficult to justify that. But if you've got him, I think you just keep him in for game week 31 and expect him to start. So Justin Kluivert's another popular pick that missed out completely in game week 30. We knew he was a doubt going into the deadline, but he wasn't in the Bournemouth squad at all. And Iraola said after the game against Ipswich, he doesn't know if he'll be fit for the weekend against West Ham. He said it's not an injury, but overload in the muscle. So it doesn't seem like a long-term problem. But I think as it stands, going into the game week 31 deadline, you've probably got to assume he's not going to start against West Ham. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sell him straight away. The fixtures afterwards are still pretty good. So if you can bench him and just play someone else instead, you might have him back for game week 32 against Fulham at home, followed by Palace away in 33 and Man United at home in 34. And at 6.3 million, bearing in mind that a lot of you would have got him cheaper than that, he's still good value. He's still on penalties. And when he's fit and available, he starts every single match pretty much. So he's a good option going forward. It's worth saying that after the Man United game in 34, it's Arsenal away in 35, which is not great. So if you're free hitting in 34, there's probably more reason to sell Kluivert because you can just get someone in for a double game week in 33, free hit in 34, so it doesn't matter. Then you've not got him for Arsenal away. But if you haven't got a free hit, yes, you've got the Arsenal match, but you've got a potential double in 36 if Man City beat if Man City beat Forest in the FA Cup. Even if Man City beat Forest, it's not a guarantee that they will double in 36, but it's possible. So I think no free hit. I would lean more towards trying to keep Kluivert if you can. If you've got a free hit, there's probably more reason to sell him if there's a good player you don't already own. A lot of people might own some of the alternatives that you could go for instead. If you are looking to sell, these are the options I've kind of put in a list. So Savinho, Elanga, Jacob Murphy, Rashford, Merino from Arsenal, and then Ismail Sarr as well. Savinho played really well against Leicester last night, just got the assist, but decent numbers over the season, started 7 games in a row. It's worth saying, like with all Man City attackers, he could absolutely be benched at some point. So don't buy him thinking that he's going to start every single match guaranteed. You cannot guarantee it. But if he does play a lot of minutes, the fixtures are quite good, especially if you can free hit in 34. If you're someone without free hit, then I really like Jacob Murphy. Leicester away this week in 31, double in 32, Villa away in 33, Ipswich at home in 34. That looks pretty good. Some people might be concerned that with Gordon, Barnes and Murphy available, Murphy's minutes won't be great. But I think when you look at it, Murphy has started, I think, every single game since game week 13. Let me have a quick look here. Jacob Murphy, the last time he was benched or didn't start, it was game week 13. So every single match since then, he's been in the 11. Now, Barnes hasn't necessarily been available for every match, neither has Gordon. But there have been plenty of weeks where all 3 of them have been available and Murphy keeps starting. So again, I can't guarantee that that will continue to be the case. But on lots of information we've got over many game weeks now, Murphy is always in that 11. So I think because he's got that additional fixture, I prefer him to someone like Elanga. Like Elanga's fine, but no double there, whereas Murphy's got that, and Murphy's got Ipswich at home and Leicester away, like either side of the double. So he just looks like a much better option. Rashford scored last night. I just don't think I would go for an Aston Villa midfielder that's not Morgan Rogers. Like Rashford scored, Asensio scored as well. So they're both looking like really good picks. They're both being transferred in as I speak, as I record this. But Rashford only played 64 minutes. He was benched the 2 matches before that. He's only had a maximum of 66 minutes since he went to Aston Villa. The minutes are not secure, neither are the starts. And it's great if you had Asensio and he got you points, but they were off the bench. Like Asensio's only started twice out of the 6 game weeks he's been available for Villa. I think he was injured in game week 28. But I just think it's too risky. I just think if you really want an Aston Villa midfielder, you just buy Rodgers. Like he starts every single game. Like could he get rotated in 32 against Southampton away? Sure. But it's not like any of the other options are guaranteed starters either. And for what it's worth, I actually quite like Villa's fixtures, especially if you've got free hit in 34. Forest at home this week, Southampton away in 32, then a possible double in 33. So I wouldn't completely rule them out. I just think Rodgers is the safest pick because of the minutes. Rashford is on penalties though. Merino from Arsenal, for me that's an avoid. Like, you could make the case that one Arsenal defender, two Arsenal attackers is best going into that double. But even in that case, I'd probably just try and buy someone like Odegaard instead. Like, Merino continues to play as the number 9. It doesn't look like that's going to stop because it's working quite well. So Saka right, Martinelli left, Trossard just back on the bench. But at some point, Trossard could just play as the number 9. I think it's more likely that Merino starts 3 or even 4 of the next 4 matches in the league. But again, I can't guarantee it. And his underlying numbers just don't scream massive amount of points for me. Like, he is a nice price. If I just go to Arsenal here, I think he's about 6 million. Is it 6.2? Probably got it wrong. 6 million dead. 6 million exactly. Even if you look at his recent numbers where he's been playing number 9, they're really nothing to shout home about. I just wouldn't want to block an Arsenal spot for the rest of the season with Merino. And I don't think he's worth a transfer in and a transfer back out. So I just wouldn't look there. And then you've got Ismail Sarr, 2 double game weeks, hopefully in the next 3. Looks like a great pick. I think most people have probably got their Palace players already. But if you don't, just pick up Sarr or Eze to make up your triple up. That's probably the most obvious one to go to. Otherwise, for me, it's probably Murphy, with or without free hit, or Savinho if you have free hit in 34. So Mateta started against Southampton last night, had a couple of decent chances, but was subbed off before the 60th minute, so finished on just 1 point, which is not ideal. That is also the second game in a row where he's been subbed early, and that's not really what we've been used to with Mateta. Like, he's played a lot of 90-minute matches in the league over recent months. Presumably, he's just trying to get back up to full fitness following that injury. I think Glasner has mentioned that over the last week or so. So I don't think it'll be a problem long term. But I think if you're looking to buy him, which over 50,000 FPL managers have done this week, or let me get my words out, or he's already in your squad, you might just have to set expectations with yourself that against Brighton at home in 31, maybe Man City away in 32, there's going to be a slight reduction in minutes and he's not going to play 90 every single week, at least for the time being. I don't think his starts are really under question, though. I don't see Nketiah being in that first 11. I could be wrong on that, but I think Mateta will be given the chance to build that fitness back up. Maybe he's struggling a little bit with the mask. I don't know. He's got to obviously wear that because of the injury. Maybe I'm just creating a narrative there that is absolute nonsense, but I still think he's a pretty good pick going forward. I did say on the wildcard draft video yesterday, I don't think he's as essential as people make out. Like, if you wanted to go Henderson or Munoz and then Sarr and Eze in a different front line and not have Mateta, I think that's absolutely fine. But for most people, if you can fit him in and afford it and the rest of the squad looks good, I think he's still a good option going forward. And I still think, despite doing badly against Southampton, I'm talking about Crystal Palace as a whole, not necessarily Mateta, they've still got 2 extra fixtures over the next 3 weeks. It's still worth tripling up despite the fact those fixtures are a bit more difficult. So no panic on Mateta. If you've got him, you're obviously keeping. And I still think it's okay to bring him in. I just don't think he's, like I said, as essential as some people make out. So game week 30 has just been one of those weeks where there's lots of issues with popular players. Alexander Isak, no different. He was subbed early last night against Leicester. Did already have a goal and a couple of bonus points, so it wasn't the end of the world. But he is important for our squads moving forward. Eddie Howe said he was withdrawn with a slight groin issue. He wasn't feeling 100% and wasn't sure in his movement. Hopefully he's okay. So he's far from being ruled out for game week 31, so you don't need to panic right now. We will get another update on Friday from Eddie Howe. He's not always that forthcoming with information, but hopefully he gives us good news. I don't think it really matters what he says, though. Unless he says he's out for weeks, you're going to keep him in your squad. Because it's Leicester away in game week 31. So unless he's ruled out, you've got to start him because obviously he can do really well in a fixture like that. And then you've got that double in 32. So if he does play in 31, he's going to be a really popular captain against Man United at home and Palace at home. Longer term, I think if you're on free hit 34, maybe you sell him in 33. If you don't have a free hit, maybe you hold him through. But I just don't think you should be making any rash decisions right now. And you also should not be panicking that he's yellow flagged, because he could absolutely start against Leicester. The only thing it will do for me is probably put doubts on the captaincy. I think if you're going to go against Salah this week, Isak's probably one of the best alternatives. But if Eddie Howe says that there's any doubts there, I just don't think you can captain him. I think you just have to go elsewhere. But I would pretty much keep him in the squad unless he's ruled out for weeks. Also, bit of good news, the Newcastle game in game week 31 is the Monday match. So he has got a little bit of extra time to recover. It's not a Wednesday night game straight into a Saturday game. He's got a couple of extra days off. So hopefully he'll be fine. And no one should be looking to sell him anyway. If you're on wildcard, it's a little bit more difficult. But again, just wait for the update on Friday. And if Eddie Howe says he's probably going to be okay, I think you include him. He's just too important to leave out. There's not that many other good forwards where you can really justify not having Isak, in my opinion, even at the 9.5 million price point. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. I'll be back tomorrow with team selection once the Chelsea versus Spurs match has been played tonight. I'm actually on a green arrow and I've still got Cole Palmer to play, so hopefully it won't be red. I'll talk about that tomorrow morning nice and early. Then we'll have final thoughts after the press conferences. Deadline stream on Saturday. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you again soon.